Good morning, and well, good morning in the UK, and welcome to the third of my author spotlights. I'm delighted to have joining me today fellow UK author Angela Wren, who is, as well as an actor, is also a director. You can find the biography below this video, so we won't go into that, and we'll get cracking. So, Angela, going back to the maybe early days, when did you start writing? And can you remember what the first thing you wrote was?
I guess I started writing as a very small child, little
Mhm.
essays in school, and I loved
Right.
making things up.
Hmm.
And I am convinced now, looking back on it as an adult, that that is as a result of, my bedtime stories. I always had bedtime
Oh,
stories as a
right.
little kid. And I
Uh-huh.
used to love reading, Grimm's fairy tales and Hans Andersen's fairy tales with my dad
Right.
on a Saturday afternoon, sat on his knee.
Nice.
So I
Nice.
guess it all stemmed from that. And
Mm.
one of my earliest memories is of being down in London, visiting family, and I'd be
Mhm.
about 4 or 5 years old, being
Wow.
taken to Foyle's bookshop on Charing
Wow.
Cross Road,
Yes.
and being absolutely mesmerised by the acres
Wow.
and acres of books that were
Mm.
everywhere. And that was the first time ever that I'd been given some money so that I could go and choose a book
Choose your
and
own.
buy it. So
Oh.
I've been hooked into books and stories from since I was about 5 years old,
Mhm.
and writing stories, I think, was just something that kind of happened quite naturally, really.
Mm. Yes, I think a lot of people see. For me, I came to proper writing, as they call it, in my late 30s, but I'd always
Mm.
been. It's my birthday next Monday, so I'm going to
Happy
weirdly
birthday.
interview myself, um, which I'd done on my blog, but not in real life. So I
Yeah.
think anyway, we'll see how that goes. It may not ever make the school. Um, so you are a full-time writer now, amongst other things, I
Um,
believe.
in between bits and pieces of other stuff that I do, yes.
Mm. Hmm.
And of course, my books are all set in France, which is where I like to spend as much time as possible each
Yeah.
year. So, and I will be leaving to go to France very shortly.
Okay.
So, in between France and in between all the other stuff I do, then yes, I do manage to
Mm.
find some time to write.
Do you have a fairly structured day? Do you find you have to set, because Denise and Netta, they
Mhm.
both write in the morning,
Mhm.
and do you find you have to sort of write and then let life take over or get things
Actually,
out the way?
because of my job, I did once have a proper job, which
Hmm.
was working in business change and project management, which was extremely pressured. But it
Right.
meant that I was working in open plan offices, and
Hmm.
that between 50 and 70% of my job was actually drafting documents and drafting material and
Right.
communications material and
Hmm.
articles, etc.,
Okay.
about whatever the business process or the project was that I was
Sure.
working on at the time.
Sure.
So I've always had the ability to kind of sit at a computer,
Hmm.
block out all the noise around me, and just
Mm.
do what I need to do with the
Right.
fingers and the keyboard.
Uh,
And so once I packed in work and realized that I actually quite like putting words and phrases together,
mm,
but perhaps not necessarily in a technical
right.
format as I
No.
used to. And,
Well, I
and
would.
that was when I started creative writing properly, really. So
Mm,
yeah, I can write anywhere,
right.
anytime, have laptop, can travel, and frequently
Yes.
do. And
And
yeah, I've written on trains. I've written in railway stations,
okay.
in the awning of a caravan,
Right.
in the garden,
Right.
anywhere.
And I would imagine killing, because you write crime novels, I would
Yeah.
imagine that killing people on paper is more therapeutic than project
Oh gosh,
management. And
yes.
yeah.
Oh,
Do
I
you
can
ever
fully
imagine that?
recommend
Do you ever imagine there's someone you know and you don't like?
it. Yes, people can irritate us in so many ways, can't they? And
Mm,
whilst I never put real people in my books, I always create my characters from an amorphous blob, and I think about who they are and
Mm,
what makes them tick and so on. But
mm,
I have been known to borrow maybe gestures or words and
right.
phrases that
Sure.
irritating people sometimes use, and
Yeah.
I've often given those to the victim. Yes.
Right. Yes, most authors say that, especially if they've got friends and family who know that they write and they read their books, that they see themselves as a particular character. But most authors tend to think, oh yes, actually those words he says will fit that character perfectly, or they do take little bits and pieces for their
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, and it's not just people I know. I mean, you can often overhear a fraction of a conversation
Mm,
on a train,
mm,
and I will think to myself, "Oh, let's write that down. I'm
yes.
sure I can find use for that." Or
Yeah.
it'll spark an idea for something else, which might turn out to be a short
Yeah.
story, or
Yeah.
perhaps an idea for a plot line in another book.
Mm, wow.
So yeah,
Mm,
I guess I'm always tuned into anything and everything that is going on around me because I pick up visual uh, prompts as well as
mm.
audio prompts as well. So,
I think we are, aren't we? As soon as we become writers, we
mm,
either have like a radar,
yeah,
or we can learn what would make a nugget for, or
mm,
fiction fodder, as I call it.
that's right.
And
That's
if
right.
I'm out with the dog and I've got my earphones in, if there's a juicy argument going on, I'll look as if I'll tap it, so I look as if I'm upping the volume so that I can still hear my music, but I'm actually pausing it so I can hear what they're saying.
Yeah. Yes, I
So
don't have earphones, but I'm very guilty of tuning into other people's conversations in
yeah,
cafes, on trains, on
yeah,
buses,
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah. So you write novels and short stories. Do you have a favorite if you had to write? Because I do as well. Um, and and short stories are my favorite because I'm an editor during the day. I find it's changed my reading. So I get partway through a novel and think and I can't read anymore because I'm too
Yeah,
critical. Whereas with
yeah.
short stories, I can do the whole thing without picking
Mm,
at them. Do
mm.
you if somebody said to you you have to stop one and you can only write the other, could you choose between the two?
Oh, God. No, I couldn't. I
Right.
really couldn't because with novels, you can go in so many different places all at once. And
Mm,
I love creating the puzzle, dropping the little red herrings in, dropping in the little
right.
clues here and
Mhm,
there. And
mm,
okay, by the time I get to the end of the story, those clues sometimes change or are moved
sure.
within the whole remit of the book.
Mm,
But the great thing about short stories is that if you've got an idea and you know it's only limited, then there you
mm,
are, you can do it in 3,000
yes.
words or 7,000 or,
Yeah.
10 and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And I love the stricture of that
Mm,
because that makes me think very, very carefully about the words that I use and the phrases
mm,
that I use.
mhm,
And when I'm writing for a specific anthology, then I know that I've got a very definite limit. And when I'm going through the editing process for the short story, that
mm,
makes me so picky about words and
sure.
phrases. And I'm constantly referring to my thesaurus then. And I
Mm,
find that writing short stories makes me use language quite differently from in a novel.
mm,
And I think it has significantly increased my vocabulary in many ways
okay.
too.
Mm,
So yeah, asking me to choose between writing a novel and writing a short story is
right.
like asking a mother to choose between her children.
Children, sure.
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about your books, one of my questions is, do you have a favorite character? And so that will be the child question.
Yeah,
Have you ever written a short story that's actually ended up then having what we call longer legs and has become a novella, or you thought might you maybe rewrite
I
as a novel?
yeah, yeah. I have my Jacques Foray books,
Hmm.
which are already out there and published, and there are two more in the pipeline.
Hmm.
Um, but I want to start a new series, and that new series is the Beauregard series with a whole completely different set of characters in a very different area of France.
Mm,
So there's still the French connection there.
okay.
But I wrote a short story for the seasonal paths anthologies, and it actually appears in Spring Paths, and it's called Madame Bovary's Curio Shop.
Nice.
And I had an idea about a character, and in fact, it was the shop. I went into an actual shop that looks like the one I've described in the story,
Hmm.
and I had an idea about the person who owns that shop.
Right.
And I took that idea and I thought, oh yeah, this is a short story. But having written the short story and got to the end of it, I very
Mm.
much realised that my character of Madame Bovary was absolutely nothing like the person she purported to be. And I thought to
Oh,
myself, there's so much more I can do with this. And
yes.
although the short story has been published now and was published last year actually in the
Mm.
anthology,
Mm.
I already now know that there's a whole novel that is going to look at who she is, why she
Right.
does what she does, what
Mm.
has happened to her, and what she does next. And she
Okay.
turns out to be quite a criminal.
Oh, wow. Fabulous.
So yes, I'm really looking forward to getting around
Yeah.
to writing that book. But that's a couple of books down the road for the
Okay.
Beauregard series first. Then.
Yeah.
So I've got to get the first one finished by the
Right.
end of this month.
Right. Do you write? Are you fluent in French? Do you write in French?
I can write in French, yes, and when I'm over there in France, I can manage most situations without any problems.
Mm.
But I'm very much aware that there are gaps in my knowledge.
Right. Mhm.
So, for instance, if a French person wanted to talk to me in detail about Emmanuel Macron and French
Right.
politics, he
Mhm.
or she would get very bored very
Okay.
quickly because
Right.
one, I don't follow French politics at all, and of
No.
course, the second thing is that an area like that for discussion brings with it its own particular vocabulary, and I've
Sure.
never bothered to learn it. So
No.
I am aware that there are gaps. So
Mm.
no, I would never claim to be fluent, but
Yeah.
I can manage most things.
Yeah. So do your presumably your books sell to English readers who love reading about other countries, and do you know whether presumably you have sales in France for
Yeah.
English speaking readers, or do you think your books might be translated at some point into
Um,
French?
I had always hoped that that would be the case.
Mm.
Whether it will be now or not, I'm not so sure.
Right.
But my publisher, Darkstroke Books, who I am really, really happy with,
Mm.
are an e-first publisher and their
Right.
focus is ebooks.
Mhm.
So with regard to translation rights and so on, um, they've left that entirely up to me. Now, at the
Okay.
moment, um, Darkstroke has made a decision to cease trading later
Right.
this year. So
Right.
my rights will be coming back to
Coming
me.
back to you,
And
yes.
and I'm kind of looking to that as a possible opportunity. And
Hmm.
maybe once I've got them settled with another publisher,
Hmm.
then maybe that would be the time to look at perhaps translation rights. But
Right.
I had always thought that once I'd got all 8 of the books, all 8 in the series out
Mm.
there, that perhaps that would be the right time to do it. But we'll
Mm.
see. We'll see what happens next.
Yes. You're also, we've talked about novels and short stories. You also write, is it just one act plays, or do you write longer scripts as well?
No, it's mainly one act stuff,
Mm.
and I've got a few of those. But I'm enjoying writing prose so much that I
Mm.
actually haven't written anything for stage for 3 or 4 years now.
Right.
So um, and I don't know if I really want to do that anymore.
Right.
I've
It's
spent I've been working on stage since I was 6 years old, so I've been dealing
okay.
with scripts as an
Mm.
actor for a
Right.
very long time. And
Mm.
as a director, I've directed any number of plays, from comedy right through to serious drama.
Hmm.
And I've done children's shows. One of my
Right.
favourite shows was James and the Giant Peach because
Oh
I used
yes,
puppets
Roald
for
Dahl.
that.
Right.
So I've been able to explore all kinds of different avenues in
Mm.
theatre, and I absolutely loved that. But I kind of think now that maybe there's not much else left for me to do in relation to
Right.
theatre. And I'm
Sure.
so enjoying writing the novels and the short
Yeah.
stories that
Yeah.
it's very much taken a back seat over the last
Right.
3, maybe 5 years.
Because a few years ago there was a an affiliation with NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, called
Mm,
Script Frenzy, which I think lasted probably half a dozen years. And I did it one
mm,
year, and it was an idea I'd got at college, and so
mm,
I put it down as a script. And I love dialogue. If books
mm,
could be pretty much dialogue only, I would love it. You know,
mm,
turn the page and
mm,
there's dialogue, and I just, oh yes, that's nice. So
mm.
script is really useful because it is pretty much it's dialogue and stage direction, pretty much, isn't it?
That's right, that's right. It's pure
So I think it's
dialogue, and
good
it's telling a
practice.
story through dialogue.
Mm, it's good practice for dialogue. So you are
Mm.
also an actor, or perhaps semi-retired actor. Something I'd have always wanted to know because I have a terrible memory. And my dad, when we were sorting out his things after he'd died, he had a cassette, so I couldn't play it now anyway. But he had a cassette of how to improve your memory, and I say to people, I've got it somewhere, but I can't remember what I've done with it, and so I have a really, really appalling memory. So how do you? A lot of people say it is purely repetition to learn lines. Do you find that, or do you have a particularly good memory?
I guess working on stage for as long as I have has helped me to attain and retain a good
Hmm.
memory. I
Right.
do have a good memory, especially for words. But
Mm.
I think um, the best way to learn lines, because that's essentially what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
is to um, use a multi-encoding system. And I didn't know it was called this until I had to do a training course for my job in business management. And what I have always done is I've written my lines. And as I've been writing my lines, I've also been saying them, which means that I'm
Right.
seeing them, I'm
Hmm.
hearing them, and I'm
Mm.
using muscle memory to create them because I'm constantly writing them.
Right.
And and that apparently, from a teaching point of view, is called multi-encoding because you're
Okay.
using more than one sense.
Right.
I know a lot of actors use tapes and just use the audio as
Mm.
their as the link through to their memory. But
Mm.
I've always found that seeing the lines as I'm writing them, actually writing them and speaking them as I'm doing
Right.
that,
Okay.
is the best way, and it
Mm.
just works for me. And it has always meant that I've been able to learn lines quite quickly.
Mm.
But as I
Okay.
say, I didn't even know that that was what I was doing until I
Right.
was about 30 odd.
Right. Yes. Because we always recommend to writers to read out their work aloud. And when I'm editing
Mm,
or editing my own stuff as well, I have a Kindle Fire which has a text to speech. So I say
mm,
she because it's a female voice. She reads it out. So she reads it out as it's written. Because when we're
mm,
looking at a screen, we think it says something. We think it says what we want it to say, when actually it's
mm,
saying something not completely different, but there's a word
mm,
missing, or you've put
mm,
through instead of thought,
mm,
that kind of thing. So it's
mm.
brilliant for that. So yes, the reading aloud, it makes total sense.
Yeah, and
So
I'm a member of a local writers group,
mm,
and one of the great things about the writers group is that I can take stuff there that I'm not 100% happy with, read it out to them, and
mm.
sometimes I can see instantly what's wrong with it as soon as
Yes,
I
it's
read it
funny,
out
isn't
to the
it, when
guys
it's in
in the
front of
group.
somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I can see it instantly, and then other times they say to me, "Oh, look what you've done with that sentence." And yeah, and I can always solve the problem.
Mm.
So my colleagues at Doncaster Writers Group are absolutely brilliant, if
Right.
anybody wants to join us.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you for that. So you're working on your novels, your
Mhm.
next two novels. You've got two more to go in the eight series.
I've got 2 more in the Jacques Fauré series,
Yes.
and they are in outline at the moment, but
Hmm.
the book that I'm working on at the moment, because I want it to go out to my beta readers at the end of this month or very early next month.
Mm,
That's the first in my new Beauregard series,
right.
which is called A Partner in Death.
Oh, she sounds fascinating. I know only what you've told me today, but yeah, she sounds. I like devious women on
Yeah,
paper. Anyway, yes. So
yes,
are
but
you tempted to write
Madam,
anything else? Sorry.
well, um, with regard to Madame Bovary does make an appearance in A Partner in Death, but that's not the book that's about her. That will come
Oh, right.
later.
Okay.
But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I'm just really enjoying it, and as I say, I'm just trying to get it ready to go to my beta readers
Mhm,
in the next couple of weeks or
mm.
so.
So you're very much a plotter. It says in your biography, and you've mentioned it a couple of times. Have you ever,
Yeah,
perhaps with a short story, do you plot your short stories? Or you just more you get an idea and see where that takes you?
the short stories are more of an idea, and I think, oh yeah, that scene, and that scene that will hang together nicely, and then I sit down and write it.
Mm,
So they are uh, much more towards the pantser end of things
mhm.
than plotting. But at least I do
Mhm.
know the route through my scenes
Yes,
before we
where it's
go
going
to
to
the
go.
computer.
Yeah.
Whereas for the novels, I have to start with my victim. I need to know who my victim is, and I need to know everything
Mhm.
about them
Mm,
and what their circle of friends is, and why they are in the locations that they are,
mm,
because that then leads me to who the killer is, why he or she commits the murder, and
mhm.
therefore what other secrets and lies they have
Right.
connected with them, and then
Mm,
how all of that fits in with Jack and his circle of friends.
mm,
And I build up the picture like that. I do have a spreadsheet that I use to help me with my planning, but I don't
right.
plan absolutely everything in every single scenes.
No.
I just plan the key route through
Mhm. Mhm.
from the death to the resolution, and of
Mhm.
course from the killer to the
Right.
victim. I know that before I sit down to write, and but
Okay.
once I've got that, I then just write, and
Yeah.
I let my characters take me through the story. And
Mhm.
sometimes they're awfully naughty and they go away from the plan,
Right.
and then I have to think, do I go with this or not? And usually I
Mm,
do. And
mm,
then when I get into the editing process, that's when I kind of think, no, I need to pull that back a bit,
right.
or I need to take that a bit further. And
Yeah.
so, whilst I do have my plan, not everything comes out exactly as per plan.
Sure.
And I think that's quite right, because the characters have to drive the plot, I think.
Yes. Yeah, and your brain will think, oh, well, actually, this is better. Plan B is a
Yeah,
better idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes your instinct helps too, and it tells you
Oh, yeah.
when perhaps you need to deviate,
Yeah.
and
Especially,
that's
I
why
think
I
when you've,
let it run.
I think especially when you've written a series, so it's so fully formed already. So you've
Yeah,
got the main characters. Have
yeah.
you ever found, final question, have you ever found that you've planned for character F to be the killer, and by the time you've got to the end, you think, well, actually, character B would be so much better?
Um, no, but I have changed a victim.
Okay. So they're the ones that appear at the beginning. So then you have to go back and change it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And this it was the killer who caused me to change the victim,
Okay.
because this particular killer was so random. He was such a random character.
Right.
And although I planned him to be a random character, when I started writing him, he just kept on taking me anywhere but where I thought we ought to go.
Okay.
And that particular book, which was Marseille, um, I I found that I went into places that I never thought I would be going.
Mm,
But the book, um, when I got through the editing process took me a lot longer than
right.
it had for the previous three. But
Mm,
um, no, when I got to the when I got to the end of the editing process, I thought to myself, no, no, Tomek was right to do what he did to me. He was
Mm,
absolutely right. And I thought that as a result, I'd got a much better book than
yeah,
perhaps I had originally planned.
yeah. Because it's weird, isn't it, that anybody who doesn't write, and I'm sure
Yeah,
readers would understand this as well, because obviously when they're reading, they're using their imagination as well,
yeah, yeah,
that the characters do take over.
they do.
That they kind of think, well, actually, I don't. It's because J.K. Rowling is reported to have said that when she'd planned her 7 book series, that there was
Mm,
a particular character she wanted to kill off, and when it got to that point, he or she didn't want to be killed off, so she killed off another one, and a different
yeah.
one instead.
Well,
So,
in my first book, I have a character called Pierre. He's 5 years old in the first book, and in my plan, I hadn't thought I would need him till the earliest at the end of book two.
okay.
But he just kept on walking onto the page. Every time
Right.
Jack was in his little police station, in
Mm,
walked Pierre. Or
right.
when Jack was in and around the village, suddenly Pierre appeared
How
on the page.
funny. Right.
And I got about halfway through the book and I thought, I've got to give this little guy a proper role. So
Mm,
I went back and replanned a bit. And yeah,
right.
so Pierre's there right from the start. And
Okay.
he's still in the books occasionally.
Okay. And do you age your characters? Because I know Ian Rankin had trouble with Rebus because I
Mm,
don't think he'd planned to write so many books, and he
mhm,
aged Rebus per book, and then
mm.
got to the point, well, actually, he was too old to be a detective anymore, so he retired him and then brought him back again. But
Yes, yes, I do age my characters.
mm,
And I've reached a point now where I think in the last book that I wrote, the last Jack book, Jack's second in command, Didier Duclos, he's beginning to show signs of needing to do something else because he was a
right,
retired policeman who came to work alongside Jack.
mm,
And so I think Didier might have to disappear
okay,
and live his dream, which is to own a boat and sail.
nice,
So that might have to happen to
yes,
him
yes,
uh, in a much larger way than it has done
mm,
so far.
mm,
And investigating magistrate Bruno Pelletier, he retired in the previous but one book.
right,
So we now have a new investigating magistrate that Jack has
okay.
to deal with.
It's always nice,
So
isn't
yeah,
it, to bring in new characters and find out what
yes,
they're all
yes,
about. Yeah.
yeah.
So will it
And
stop at book 8, do you
at the
think?
moment, at the moment, I can't see anything after book eight, but that doesn't mean to say that that is the last book.
No,
What happens in book eight is that Jack goes back home to Paris because his father is dying,
right,
and his sister warns him not to be late this time because he missed his mother's death because he
right.
was too busy at work.
To
So
work,
he
yeah.
doesn't want to make the same mistake.
Mm,
And when he gets back to Paris, he discovers various things that he didn't know about. There's a family
okay.
secret that neither he nor his sister know anything about. There's a cold case that he has to solve. And so when he's got to the end of all that, at the moment, I don't know whether Jack stays in Paris or
Mm,
comes back home to the
okay,
Cevennes.
right.
I probably won't know the answer to that question until I actually
Until he's
start writing the
finished.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you.
today. And hopefully see you again. And we'll talk about, work our way through your series. And
Hopefully,
hopefully you have
yes.
the new series up and running by then, one by
Yes,
one.
I'll be in touch once I've got it, when I know
Yes.
I've got the publication date. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Lovely. Thank you
Brilliant.
very much. Okay. Thank
And
you.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Angela. You're very welcome.